Okay, Namaste and welcome to this webinar entitled Nepal and India's Northeast, Past, Present and Possibilities by Asian Institute of International and International Affairs, AIDIA, which is a foreign policy-based think tank in Kathmandu, Nepal. Looking at the very recent developments between Nepal and India, resulted from the, I guess, long-standing border dispute. If we analyze it from the high level of India bilateral relations, then I think we are in new lows now. And in many sense, it is unfortunate that while we need the highest level of bilateral collaborations to fight against the COVID-19 pandemic, we are once again entangled with the border dispute. We know that border disputes are certainly the highly sensitive issues with its deep-rooted connections to notion of sovereignty, nationalism, national identity. Hence, to resolve the dispute amicably, I think we need to have very serious political intent in first place, I would say, and also the intensive diplomatic engagement. AIDIA has already organized around half a dozen of virtual seminars by inviting experts from both sides to suggest for resolving these border issues. We are aware about the fact that multifaceted relations between Nepal and India, from close cultural affinities, economic interdependence, people-to-people ties, among others, while resolving border issues should be in our priority. At the same time, we can't be also like stagnant in working together and promoting our common interest in other front at the same time. So some of the experts in our previous webinar was also suggesting for looking beyond the Delhi-Kathmandu relations, for instance, working closely with the bordering state between two countries. So in this webinar, distinguished panel of experts will help us to understand various facets of Nepal and Northeast India, including like historical linkages between Nepal and Northeast India. Similarly, like what are the prospects of economic partnership, including trade, tourism, connectivity, investment, among others. For example, like Bangladesh has already granted Nepal, India, and Bhutan to use the Chitangan mode. In this context, the cooperations between, I think, Nepal and Northeast India has had the high imperative for promoting economic partnership as well. So we'll also like try to understand the cooperations in water resource management, agriculture, environment, food security, which are like emerging non-security threat to the like regional and global arena, as well as we will also try to analyze the cross-border migration and development. As at the meantime, we'll also look at the how Nepal and Northeast India can cooperate in various regional and sub-regional architectures, for instance, BVIN and BIMSTEC. Similarly, like while analyzing through the lens of security dimensions, northeastern region of India is, I think, like considered as the very sensitive. So we'll also try to examine the what are the existing security challenges and explore the necessary joint efforts to meet these challenges. So without further ado, I'll very briefly introduce our distinguished panel of experts who will help us to understand these various facets of Nepal and Northeast India. So we have with us Dr. Harivangsha Jha, sir, who is the Executive Director at the Center for Economic and Technical Studies, Nepal. Welcome, sir. And similarly, we have Sabyasachi Datta, sir, the Founder Director of Asian Confluence, the think tank based in Shillong, India. Similarly, we have Keshab Poudel, sir, Chief Editor, News Spotlight, Nepal. Similarly, we have Akanshya Shah, who is the Nepali journalist and researcher based in New Delhi. And with us, Major General Binoj Basnyat, sir, who is the Strategic and Foreign Affairs Analyst of Nepal. And also we have Atul Thakur, who is the Nodal Coordinator at Nepal, India-Nepal, PHDCCI, and the Columnist for Kathmandu and the Hindu. So without further ado, what we can do is like we can take the one from Nepal and one from India on alternate basis. So I'd like to request Dr. Harimangsil just asked for your videos, so maybe like you can make it around like 7 minutes.
Should
And
I
then
begin?
after that, I'll go with subject.
May I begin?
Yeah, please, sir.
Thank
Go
you
ahead.
very much for giving me this occasion to share some of my views on Nepal and India's northeast. Now, before I begin, let me tell you that this northeastern region of India.
Hari sir, I think you are also simultaneously running some other device nearby you.
Pardon?
I think you are also simultaneously like running some other device nearby you, right? Maybe like we are hearing a lot of noise from your side, so.
I see. No, I have one mobile and then one laptop before me. So should I close this?
Yeah,
close,
maybe.
close.
Yeah, maybe that is the reason. Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if you will hear me.
Can you bring your mobile close to your mouth, please?
No, I turned off my mobile. Now I'm on my laptop. Is it okay?
I think we can all mute ourselves and only allow the speaker to be on.
Yeah.
That will help.
Yes.
So it is laptop. I have two laptops here. Is it better now? Is it better?
Yeah, there is no like disturbance, but your sound is too low now. You are not like very clearly audible.
Oh, I close that device. Mobile. No, it is only laptop. So if I speak loudly, will you hear me?
Yeah, please try once.
This will work.
Yeah, we can hear you. This is all right.
Okay.
Please.
So let me tell you that India's northeastern region that constitutes these 8 states like Arunachal Pradesh, Assam, Manipur, Meghalaya, Mizoram, Nagaland, Sikkim and Tripura. That is the most vibrant economy of India, and it is very important strategically, economically and otherwise also, as these 8 states that cover these 8 states do have this boundaries with 5 countries of the world, important countries of the world, like Tibet region of China, then Myanmar, then Bangladesh, Nepal, and Bhutan. So this region is very much important to India, and it is also important to us, that is with the Nepalese, because if we go into the history, what we find is that we have made our presence in that region.
So, Arisa, what we can do is my colleague Sajina will assist you to fix this technical error. So now, can I move with like Keshab sir's presentations? Then we'll come back to you later.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Now I'd like to request like Keshab sir to make your interventions.
First of all, thank you very much for inviting me to take part in this webinar.
I would also like to request you to like unmute yourself. I can do that myself.
That's all right? You are hearing me? Shyamji?
Yeah, please, sir, take it forward.
So thank you very much for you and your organizations as our participant giving me opportunity to speak few words about Nepal's relations with Northeast India. And since Sabya Datta is there, who has been organizing the linking whole South Asian countries with the Northeast India, so it is privilege to speak in front of him as well. So Abhijit, thank you very much. First of all, despite border staff dispute, whatever maybe at the political level, Nepal and India has some unique characters, kind of relations that only few countries have. It's a very intensive and it's a very larger scale. I can say like this. Particularly Northeast, we have a very special relations. Like one of the book on the migrations by Leela Bahadur Basnyat is Basai is a very the pathetic situation of migratory behavior of people and their condition which mentioned. So starting from this, the Northeast India and Nepal have historical linkage. We start from maybe 14th centuries, or around 14th century. This Machindranath is the chariot festival. We used to have annually. You have a chariot festival. This Machindranath, which linkage with Assam, Kamakhya. So religiously, around 500 years for relations. Then this temple of the Kamakhya and interaction of the people of Nepal is long, the 500 years by state, and people to people are much longer than that maybe. So that gives the some sort of our connectivity with Assam. I mean Assam and as well as Northeast states, 7 Northeast, and there are large chunk of Nepalese people, Nepali speaking Indian people living there. So in that way, Northeast India and Nepal has a very strong cultural and the religious and the civilization as a people to people relations.
Keshab sir, can you slightly increase the distance between you and your device, because your profile is
okay,
yeah,
that's all right.
Fine, good.
I have written something here. So there are this is the cultural relations that that bind together, and they are the foundations of our religions and this people to people. Similarly, we have a natural relation as well, because the elephant from Assam visit Koshi annually. Used to visit. Nowadays, because of this settlement in different parts of the country, that it is gradually going down. So naturally, also the Northeast state and Nepal has a special kind of relationship. Now because of road, railways, the connectivity also is quite good, because if I want to go to any Northeast state, I can go from I can go from Kathmandu to fly to even eastern part of Nepal, taking by air or railways or by transport. So there are so much of advantage with us nowadays because of road. And when we are whenever we have a political of other kind of problem at the state level or the political level, it doesn't affect our relations at the people to level. It continues for the centuries, and it still continues. In that sense, the Nepal can Nepal and India can also learn how the civilizational connections between Northeast India and Nepal help to strengthen our bilateral relationship. And other things, there are in terms of, like our trade and this tourism, and in tourism sector, a lot of because of this religious shrine exists here and here, Pashupatinath here, and Kamakhya, there large number of people visit from different part of Nepal to Assam, and Brahmaputra River. They go also from that part, that side. Many people are coming to see the Pashupatinath or this Janaki temple. So that's that kind of relations we have. So Northeast India and Nepal has a special relations, which though we would not realize it at the level, because of the other thing, there are large number of Nepali speakers as well in Northeast state. So that we need to take in mind. So learning from our relations with Northeast state Nepal, we can if we broaden at the at the state level, it can help to diffuse tension, like like this sort of I like to say that Nepal and India has a the thousands of interactions, millions of interactions every day between people to people. People cross the border from here, animal cross the border from here and there. So my perception is the small kind of dispute sometimes it will go down, because our civilization relations is so strong. Even the states relations sometimes cannot work. So saying that the BBIN is another milestone to link us, because BBIN related to Bhutan, Bangladesh, India, and Nepal, and that is where the northeast the northeast India can benefit from this. And similar way, BIMSTEC is also very much with is East Asia, linking East Asia. So BBIN this, and we have one with like India, Myanmar, and Bangladesh. So there is a sub-regional group also as well here. So there are a lot of potential to have increased cooperations, and investment here. So far as security is concerned, as you may, one of your point is security. Recently, in South Asia, because this radicalization, radical forces are growing that need to be jointly handled by security forces of both the countries. So for that we need to have the broader understanding and broader interactions between information sharing between security agencies of both the country. And this one of the phenomena I recently see, this Rohingya refugees. The number of Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh are going already crossing 1 million. So even we have in Nepal, in Kathmandu, we have almost 3 dozen Rohingyas already in Nepal. So we have to have a better coordinations to to manage the Rohingyas if they come. How we will handle. So so as I mentioned, that Nepal and India relations is not one part; it's a multi-dimensional and it's a multi-layer. Religion, culture, civilization one hand, and state relations the other hand. So we need to make these blend these together so that we can improve our relations. Thank you very much. That's my sir.
Okay. Thank you, Keshab sir, for your interventions. Without re-emphasizing what you already said, I'd like to move with Sabri sir for your interventions.
Okay. So good afternoon, and thank you very much for having me on board this very important dialogue between Nepal and Northeast India. Greetings to all of you from all the 7 sisters and 1 brother. We have 7 states in the Northeast and 1 brother, Sikkim. 7 sisters and 1 brother. We are living, this dialogue comes, I think, at a very important time when our headlines are captured by a lot of very emotive rhetoric. And also we are in the middle of a pandemic, a global pandemic, which is nothing less than, I think, a world war. Never have we seen something where the whole world has come to a standstill like we have now. So it's a good time probably to reflect, and I would just like to say that maybe in the terms of Nepal Northeast India relations, uh, geography is king. And when I say that, I mean, if let us look at beyond politics, beyond the boundaries of man-made nations and culture and society, let's look at the geography. If you look at Nepal and the northeastern region, we are what I would like to call it a mountain to sea ecosystem. If you see the hills, the mountains, you have the Mount Everest and the very tall mountain, the Himalayas on the north. And then we come down, we have the Terai, and then you have the plains of the Brahmaputra. And then the rivers take us to the plains of Bangladesh and on to the Bay of Bengal. So essentially, it is one ecosystem. If you see from the southern side of the Himalayas, Nepal and Northeast India together constitute a mountain to sea ecosystem interlaced by a lot of rivers, water bodies, forests, animal corridors, biodiversity. All of these today are going to be crucial for the survival of our people for tomorrow. So looking at this geography, it is not for no reason that my second point is history is a great teacher. So if geography was king, then history is a great teacher. And what does history tell us? History tells us that way before colonial times, people contacted each other, people moved between our countries, between the regions. There was confluence of cultures, there was confluence of food, lifestyles. We have a very large Nepalese population in the Northeast region. There were migrations, and migrations both ways. When we had, when there were tensions in Nepal, there were people moving southwards. When there were tensions in the Indian side, in these areas, the people moved back. So people had a very fluid flow. Even today, if we see this, our region, the Northeast India has 5 neighboring countries: Bangladesh, Myanmar, Nepal, Bhutan, and China. Out of all these 5 countries, 3 of the borders are fenced. Only Bhutan and Nepal are non-fenced borders. And the maximum amount of goods and traffic and people movement happen through Nepal and the Northeast India. Why don't we look at more constructive ways of engaging, especially in the light of several projects that are ongoing in the Northeastern region. As you know, I will start with a few connectivity projects. The Northeastern region is soon going to be linked to the ASEAN mainland through the India-Myanmar Thailand trilateral highway. It was a project long due, but it is now gaining very fast momentum in its completion. This for Nepal, connectivity through the Kakarbita-Siliguri corridor through Bangladesh or through Siliguri to Assam to Manipur and onto the ASEAN is a great connectivity, I think, for Nepal and Northeast to connect to the ASEAN. Secondly, there is a lot of connectivity between the Northeast and Bangladesh. There are many of the old routes, pre-partition routes coming up, being restored. There are railway lines, the roads. There are several very promising aspects in the inland waterways. There are multimodal transport hubs that are coming up. And I think it's the right time for Nepal to link to this access to the Bay of Bengal. And if we see Nepal Northeast, on the north, Nepal has high, heavy mountains. And on the south, there are these naturally flowing rivers, which can take us, goods, people, to the large, theater, if I may say, of the Bay of Bengal. And with latest India's latest world in the geopolitics, the Indo-Pacific theater, which is basically through the Bay of Bengal to the larger Indian and Pacific Oceans, the entire gamut opens up. So it's an opening up of a new dimension, which is possible through the connectivities between Nepal and Northeast India. In this line, there's another thing possible, which is through the Kosi River. You can connect to the Ganga and on through to the Ganga to the inland Indo-Bangladesh protocol route, which again connects to the Bay of Bengal. We are looking at a time when we could see, we could vision maybe, we cannot see it very clearly maybe, but we can certainly, as think tanks and academics and strategic experts, think of a tomorrow where peoples and goods are easily moving through this region, whether through inland waterways, through ecologically sustainable methods. And when we talk about this, obviously then each country, each state starts looking at its forests, because if we have to sustain ships to be flowing on the Kosi, we have to stop siltation up north in the higher reaches of the forests. So automatically it's an ecosystem unleashed of sustainable livelihoods, response to larger things like climate change, fast melting of snow in the Himalayas, all these kind of things. And I think in times of such a time, when we must not forget that we are still in the middle of a COVID, what I call the COVID era. And the COVID era has taught us one thing, which we mustn't forget, which is that nature does not respect man-made boundaries. Look at the virus. It has not respected anybody. We are talking about borders today at one level. Some of our headlines, both in India and in Nepal, have been taken up with border disputes lately, unfortunately so. But we also have the COVID, which has not respected any borders. And it has made us come down to a grinding halt. And developed nations, and it's a great equalizer. So, and we are not out of it already. So I think it's a time of great contradictions. These contradictions, on one side we are talking about border disputes, and on one side we are talking about how helpless we are, even when we have something like a pandemic, and no border can stop anybody from being isolated. So what that means is that we are connected. We have to collaborate. We have to. Collaboration is not negotiable. The future belongs to collaboration. I think this is something that I would like to emphasize in terms of this COVID-19. And when we talk of collaboration, I would like to spell out a few areas that, particularly with the Northeast, I talked about connectivity, but power with Nepal having a great, highland waters, same for Bhutan, and India and Bangladesh has a lot of power, a need for power. We could think of a BIN, Bangladesh, India, Nepal, or Bangladesh, a BBIN Nepal grid, or a BIMSTEC grid in power. And here Nepal and Northeast India only have to gain, because these hill economies, these mountainous economies, they can produce a lot of power. Second, I think what COVID times have taught us is health. There's a great need for investment in public health. And when we talk of health, we come back to agriculture. The lot of the food we grow today, we have a food security problem. And cooperation in food security is going to be paramount. And again, I go back to my initial comment about how we are a mountain to sea ecosystem. What that means is that if you take from Nepal all the way to Bangladesh, through the Northeast India, the plains, we have all kinds of climatic patterns. We have heavy rainfall, we have, chars, we have riverine areas, we have mountains, we have forests, we have high mountains, low mountains, absolute plains. That means there is great complementarity in precipitation patterns and great complementarity on what is growing. So if we put together our heads and minds, and our people can work for compatibility, complementarity in agricultural production, which is sustainable. You know, in India, if you remember, we had a green revolution. And today, after so many years, we find in India, and I'm just sharing this with you, that the green revolution may not have been all that successful, because we looked at models of agricultural production which were not sustainable. Too much of use of fertilizers which have made the land barren, etc., etc. Today, I think when health, pandemics, climate change, these are major issues. Sustainability in agriculture would be a great area of cooperation. Third, agriculture and allied products. History tells us there's a paper published by one of our friends in Virginia University a few years back, where she shows how the dairy farmers, the dairy, the gwalas basically of Nepal, they actually had the entire dairy economy of the Northeast region. They had it in there. So I think this is a great time for reviving that narrative, such as dairy farming and animal husbandry and others. And of course, considering the great cultural, and when I say cultural, it is eco-cultural, it is eco-tourism. There's great potential for tourism. Whether it is Buddhism, whether it is animism, whether it is Hinduism, whether it is the footsteps of the animals, or the riverine tourism, agriculture tourism, community tourism. These are all avenues in which countries of, the states of the Northeast, along with Nepal, share many, many complementarities. And today, when tourism industry has been hit very badly in times of the COVID, this is the time to restart, rethink between the Northeast and Nepal, what kind of regional tourism can be fostered. Mind you, now I spoke about, there is also an idea that I would like to introduce, which is the Siliguri area, Kakarbita, Siliguri, a little bit of Jaigaon, the Bangladesh border. This could all become a trading zone, common trading zone, where, goods and services from each of these countries could be mutually traded amongst each other. So why don't we look at that? Now, I have spelled out many, many ideas. Now, what is the main challenge to these ideas in times to come? I think there will be two main challenges. One is, if people on the ground who are, say at the borders, they have to understand the value of what is possible. A small problem at a border should not be escalated to something that creates a narrative of non-cooperation. And this is something I think we have to be very careful about. We as think tanks and well-meaning people of the region, of our respective countries, we need to be very careful in how the right narratives can be portrayed, which are in mutual good, which can bring inclusive growth, inclusive prosperity, mutual respect. I do know and I do agree that there have been problems. There have been problems of migrant labor movements. There have been, many times Nepalese have been driven out in communal riots in the Northeast. We are all privy to that. But I think the future still belongs to collaboration and cooperation. There are many narratives in place, and it is up to us how we take the positives forward. Because what is the other alternative? The other alternative is rising tensions, closed borders. And I can tell you, as being from the Northeast, closed borders really do not benefit anybody. They neither add to security, neither do they add to trade, neither do they add to any form of constructive people-to-people contact. And so with Nepal, we are really fortunate because we have an open border, we have free-flowing people, we have a historically a great relation. And I think India-Nepal, but particularly Northeast India-Nepal relations can become a border relations, can become an example for the rest of South Asia. Instead of it going south and going the other way, which sometimes we are at risk of, so this is something of a responsibility I think we all must carry. And of course, in a world of today where the rise of nationalism, there are the rise of the world is changing. I mean, every country we are seeing the rise of very different types of voices. But we mustn't forget that history is our biggest teacher and geography is king. And these will not respect those type of voices in the long term. I think the long term belongs to collaboration if we need to have a prosperous future. Mind you, I want to, from the Northeast India, Northeast has 7 states, 1 brother, 7 sisters, 1 brother. Not too many years back, there were not so many states. And not so far back also, there were not so many countries in the region. So we have seen from the Northeastern perspective, division of, first there was the division, East Pakistan, West Pakistan, there was the division, then Bangladesh, then of course the formation of Bangladesh was a historic one. And then many of the states in the Northeast have come up recently. Mizoram was formed as late as 1987. Meghalaya was formed in 1970. Nagaland was formed in 1971. So it is not very far away that these states have come up. And these states have come up for good reasons, but the politics, if the political economy has to be now driven by the need for better collaboration. This is what each of the states, I work with all the states, with the policymakers, with the academics in the state. I can tell you for sure that a trend we saw in the Northeast, that okay, let's become a state because we are a different identity, we need a state for ourselves. That rhetoric is slowly being replaced by, okay, we are a state, but now how can we work with others? So that collaboration is coming to the fore. And I think we need to include Nepal. And in that context, I think BBIN and BIMSTEC and, whether it is BBIN, BIMSTEC or even SAARC for that matter, or even Indo-Pacific for that, all of these regional collaborations, they each carry their own value. And I think they are not, one cannot be replaced with the other. So, but at the core of it lies good bilateral relations, and which we enjoy. My last and very last point is, I think for that, whatever the governments of the day have to do, they are doing. There is the politics of the day. Politics has its own compulsions, rightly or wrongly. I'm not going to debate that, but we need to keep up people-to-people relations, institutional contacts, increased collaborations between entrepreneurs from the region, increased collaboration between the think tanks, between the universities. And I think, that would be the stepping stone. So I would urge, my closing note would be to urge all of you and the AIDIA, and on behalf of Asian Confluence, of course, I would like to also pledge my support that we need to keep up the level of contact. We need to increase the number of people at various levels. Let us have more interactions between entrepreneurs, between chambers of commerce, between the universities, at all levels. Between the farmers, between the dairy workers, and how we can do that in these times. It's becoming easier with things like Zoom and webinars and stuff like that. So I think we need to take it to that level. On that note, thank you very much. I hope we can do something to follow up on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sabri sir, for offering some pragmatic recommendations by your long experience in working in the Northeastern region. So I think that will be really helpful to like finalize some of the particular area in order to take it forward. So now I'd like to move with Dr. Haribangsa Jha sir. Maybe we will not face similar technical problem again. Let's see. Yeah. Hari sir? Yeah.
Hello. So, as I was telling, that this region, northeast region, is still problematic.
Yeah, but there is still like a very high echo from the side.
How was this? I think the problem comes when I unmuted. Otherwise, it was okay.
Please, go ahead, sir. Maybe like you can be very, very brief. So that is the maybe like ultimate options we have now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now doing. Just a minute.
Harish sir, I think we're extremely sorry. Maybe like we have to go with another panelist for now and came back to you again. Maybe that will be a wise idea for now. So may I request Akanshya ma'am for your interventions now?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, ma'am.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for the invitation. I think a lot of point was shared by Dr. Datta. He's actually put the entire discussion to a roundabout. I mean, he's talked about the opportunities and challenges. Very little for us to highlight, but I will be very brief and to the point. Just adding on to what Dr. Datta has just said. Well, firstly, we are obviously not experts in Nepal's relation with the Northeast. We are journalists, and the journalism from India-Nepal point of view has been very, very concentrated with India's north and Kathmandu-centric. The journalism in terms of even daily reporting has not even come up. I mean, we don't even have opinions emerging from the other parts of Nepal itself, forget about other parts of India. There are various different types of narratives in Nepal at present, and obviously in India. But the problem is we just do not get to hear of it. So I strongly support what Dr. Datta has just said about more contacts. Having said that, in my experience being in India for about a decade, is that we do not even need to talk about the cultural affinity that we have with the Northeast. We just automatically mix with everybody there. It's like we're the sugar in the teacup. So there is a automatic affinity. We mix very well. We understand each other, and the biggest advantage of the Nepali language, is an amazing factor that brings us together. When there are issues that concerns the Northeast, like for example, when the Northeast students were, protesting in the streets of Delhi against harassment, discrimination, it is very natural for, Nepalese living in India to, can you hear me? Okay, for Nepalese living in India to come together and join that. So this is the kind of, this is the kind of, cooperative framework that we have at people-to-people level. Now, in my interaction, and obviously I'm going to speak of only my experience, in my interaction with the people of Northeast, especially the Nepali-speaking population of the Northeast, it comes up again very naturally to look for cooperations, areas of expansion. But a big hindrance obviously has been inability of both the governments to bring these institutions to forefront of policy making, because the decisions are dictated by this by the central governments, like for instance the Ministry of External Affairs. How about next time when you have a group of journalists visiting India from Nepal, instead of sending them to Agra, maybe we should send them to Guwahati, for instance. When there are high-level visits from Nepal and there's visits from even at the Prime Minister level or Minister's level, even delegations coming out of the Parliament, they should be encouraged to visit institutions in Northeast to expand this dialogue. So this was just my point to add on to what Dr. Datta had just said. So therefore, I think increasing the people-to-people connect is going to be the key of taking our relation with Northeast ahead. You all have obviously, my panelists have already talked about a lot of things. I do feel that the food security was a very, very important sector. We could look at also, I think, food processing. There is even if it's a very small limit, but Nepalese businesses do have interests in the Northeast. I think food processing sector is one sector which needs some collaboration. And to add to the climate change, prospects of cooperation in climate change, I think wildlife conservation. Wildlife conservation is one sector I think we should definitely look at. Dr. Datta talked about the geography. The number of areas under our conservation in both Northeast India and Nepal is immense. And I think Keshavji also spoke about the movement of elephants in that route, which has been going on for a long time. I think wildlife conservation, vis-a-vis obviously the larger debate of climate change, should and can definitely figure in our mutual discussions. Cultural linkages are very, very strong. Tourism has also been mentioned. Government of India has connectivity as highest priority between the two countries. There should be immediately, passenger bus services connecting Thakur Silguri area to the larger Northeast. Maybe we can also opt for sister city cooperation because of the linkages in Buddhism, and I strongly feel that Buddhism will play a very, very significant role in bringing Northeast and Nepal together in the future. Since we are having so much political dispute, things would probably only move ahead if we look at ties in terms of religion, art, culture. I come from a artistic background, and literature. We're so rich in literature. So many of people from Northeast have been is still widely read in Nepal. I think we must cash on that affinity. And I'll just come back a little bit to the issue of identity, because Nepali language is like I said, I think is the most important common factor that binds us. The Nepali speaking people of Northeast, I think, have been and still are on a very identity-based movement. They still feel that probably their identity has not been recognized. That's why time and again the whole issue of Gorkhaland has emerged. Now, this is a very important factor. Both Northeast and Nepal are young democracies. you know, Nepal is only experimenting since 1990. We have lots of problems. We have federal issues to deal with. We have major issues because I think that we are also a very, very young democracy. And like it was mentioned earlier, that even the Northeast, you know, there are younger states, states which have just which have been there, but now wanting to assert their say in the larger discussions and deliberation. So yes, I think challenges are immense, as has already been pointed out. I'm not going to repeat both the opportunities and challenges, but in terms of connectivity, and especially in terms of power and grid connectivity, I think it is high time the members of the BBIN become highly active. Nepal has to be very, very seriously committed to BBIN. In the past, we have had very unpleasant episodes concerning, Nepal in terms of BBIN. So, given this background, given the background of the border dispute at Kalapani, and obviously the most important, the crisis, facing us today, the COVID-19, I think. Coming up with a cooperative framework is definitely the need of the time, and there is a need to shift the entire northern India narrative in terms of India's neighborhood policy to northeast, where there is larger areas of cooperation, where we have less feud, less dispute, in spite of all the historical facts. So I think I'll stop there and take questions if there are any. I've already taken 8 minutes. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Akanshya ma'am, for your insights. Before going to Binoj Basnyat sir, I'd like to request all of our attendees to put your questions in the chat box, and it will be also helpful if you like put the name from whom you want to get the answers from. So, Binoj sir, over to you.
Thank you, Shyam. I'm sure you can hear me.
Yes, please.
Okay. Firstly, I think the webinar conducted today is in such a time that in the 1970s, things were happening. Lots of things were happening in the northeast Himalayan, and we can witness things happening at the northwest Himalayan in the region of Ladakh. At the same time, when you come to the center of the Himalayas, the border issues between Nepal and India, now it's such a nice time to talk about the northeastern part, Nepal and the northeast. So the geopolitical, geostrategic, and the geoeconomic environment in the Himalayan region, I mean, it must be well analyzed and evaluated to give an effective diplomatic management, considering that Indo-Sino and Indo-US relations are constantly changing. So the endorsement of the new map with the induction of Kalapani region in the constitutions by the President of Nepal has made the Kalapani region occupied when it was disputed for both Nepal and India, adding sensitivities to the Himalayan region. Now the border boundaries joining China along the Himalayas will therefore continue to be a matter of concern for both China and India and the 5 states that border both the powers, including Nepal. So these concerns are also likely to escalate because of what is happening at a more micro level. An example can be the 16th June deadly skirmish in the western sector of the disputed border between Indian-controlled Ladakh and the Chinese-controlled Aksai Chin. So the incident took place after 45 years in the eastern region, from the eastern region of Arunachal Pradesh. So the focus of the US defense forces in the region, the building of the Chinese defense assets along the Tibetan plateau, and India's neighborhood policy and Act East policy are all indications of a larger power game compromising the competition between the two largest economies of the world. Therefore, the upcoming geopolitical evolution of the Himalayan region is an important area of concern. So when I will be touching upon the topic given today on Nepal and the India's northeast, let me put the geostrategic picture of the Himalayan region in perspective. A geopolitical narrative assumed in the power competition, cooperation and confrontation now between China, India, and the US in South China Sea, South Asia, and the Himalayan region. Though the arc of the Himalayas is 2,500 kilometers, the 5 countries' bordering distance is more than 5,800 kilometers, and China borders every part of them. Afghanistan has 76 kilometers, Bhutan has 470, India covers more than 3,500, Nepal covers 1,414, and Pakistan 523 kilometers. So China and India's rise and influence is leading to geopolitical and geoeconomic stimulus in South Asia's region. So the militarizations of the Himalayas can be an example of the two powers' interest being more political with risks of threats in defending the Himalayan region. For China, the province of Xinjiang, the autonomous region of Tibet of China, and Yunnan, alongside the Himalayas, is in the same way imperative for stability. So China's peaceful rise, and sometimes referred as a peaceful development, is an official principle for countering China threat theory. So China has become apparent as a political, economic, and military power, and ensuring to nations in South Asia, and its augmentations will not be a menace to peace and security. So the Indian Himalayan region is the sections of the Himalayan within India, spanning 11 Indian states and union territories, namely Jammu Kashmir, Ladakh, Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, Sikkim, Arunachal Pradesh, Nagaland, Manipur, Mizoram, Tripura, Meghalaya, Assam, and West Bengal of the Indian Republic. So the Himalayan region can be divided in 3 sectors: the western sector, the central or the middle sector, and the eastern sector that I will be going into a little depth. So the western sector is 33,000 square kilometers in the Aksai Chin and Ladakh. And the center or the middle is Nepal with 1,414 kilometers. So the eastern sector is 90,000 square kilometers, is Arunachal. So long-standing disagreements over the border have plagued bilateral ties since the independence of the Republic of India in 1947 and the People's Republic of China in 1949. Such differences has resulted in at least one war, India-China War of 1962, and on both eastern and western sector, and numerous confrontations and standoffs since then. The eastern sector, Indian state of Arunachal Pradesh, includes Tawang district that China claims. Nepal's stretch of 1414 is also a very sensitive and perceived as a probability of threat to both China and India. Nepal stood as a buffer, but the opening and the likelihood of the strategic connectivity with air, land, and train from the Himalayas to the borders of India and the trends of geopolitics will put up with regional linkages which will uphold security, diplomatic, economic, and political consequences. So though all 6 mountain passes from China to Nepal are vibrant, the strategically promising the Kalapani area, which is 416 kilometers to Delhi, located at the northwest end, and the easternmost Olangchungula is 41 kilometers to Siliguri corridor, known as the chicken neck of India. So both these areas are the only 2 districts that border both China and India. Siliguri is a state of West Bengal, is a vital intersection that connects Bhutan, Nepal, and Bangladesh. So the Darjeeling Hills, Northeast India, and Sikkim are equally imperative. The two tiny Himalayas, South Asian is Bhutan and Nepal, along the Himalayas and the northeastern parts of India, also known as the Seven Sisters, are the most important strategic constituent in South Asia. So Nepal's role in the midst of an evolving South Asian region is crucial, as it encompasses a long border at the center and the realignment of strategic networks across the Himalayan region that join China and India may also bring Nepal's buffer role under further analysis. So Nepal's foreign policy, with non-alignment and peaceful coexistence at its heart, will have to further be analyzed as well. Here, all conditions on which our policies lay, including the end of World War II, the revolution in China, and India's independence, will be overridden by new events. So the geostrategic importance and trends of geopolitics is shifting in and around the Himalayas, with China strategically entering South Asia, and the United States reinforcing into the Indo-Pacific with firms and strategies, and Nepal and other South Asian nations finding options to move about, obtaining their long-awaited interests. This is getting India in a delicate standpoint with its first neighborhood policy in discomfort. So let me conclude with 6 strategic considerations that are imperative to take note in coming to a new conclusion if Nepal's current foreign policy is still viable and the Nepal and the northeastern region still stays stable. One is shifting of the geography with infrastructure development. Second, the geopolitical compulsions. Third, the power competition. Fourth, India-Nepal special relationship. Fifth, resources like water and traditional cultural linkages between Nepal and India. So if there are any more things, I'll take them in the question and answers. Thank you. Back to you, Shyam.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir, for providing a very larger picture of security dimensions between Nepal and northeastern India, as well as the whole in the regional architecture. Now, I'd like to move with Atul, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Shyamji. Am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible, but you're not
visible. Yeah.
Yeah, fine.
Thank you, Shyamji. Exactly a year back, we visited Sikkim to host India-Nepal Economic Partnership Summit. And I was surprised to know that not so many deliberations of that nature had taken place earlier in that state. In fact, it was considered by the Chief Secretary of the state and the CM and others. And being pleased to share with you all that through policy advocacy under Aegis of India-Nepal Center at PHDCCI, which I look after, the government of Sikkim is going to establish a Center for India-Nepal Film and Media Production, which is a kind of unique center in Northeast covering Nepal and India-Nepal relations. I will take a bit more about Sikkim. Hello?
Yes, sir, you're audible, yeah.
Yeah, in Sikkim, about 62.6% of the residents speak Nepali, including Nepali is the language. Nepali is the official language of Sikkim government. Second data which I would like to share with you, which is very crucial. As per 2011 census carried out by Government of India, we don't have any exact measurement about how many Nepalese speaking people live in Northeast, but the census happened in 2001 says there are 5,65,000 Nepali speaking people live in Assam alone. Second only to West Bengal, which had 10,23,000 people. Among the northeastern states, Sikkim, Meghalaya, Mizoram, Manipur, Arunachal Pradesh, and Nagaland also have Nepali speaking residents. So my point is here that when Indian government had started NRC, CAL, etc. last year, about 1 lakh Nepalese-speaking people were left out in Assam. I had written an article in Kathmandu Post, a detailed one. I also flagged up the issue with the Home Ministry, and later on this was resolved. While the strategy, economy, everything have been covered, what I want to make a point here, the identity. About 13 MLAs in Assam, even today, are Nepali speaking. Two MPs, 3 Sahitya Akademi winners, including Indra Bahadur Rai from Darjeeling, are from the Gurkha side. It is not just the people-to-people connect which should bind us. It is true that we feel alike, we speak alike, as I have heard our speakers here. And I'm glad that Binoj sir has rightly mentioned about special relationships, which is quite sensitive nowadays. Even saying that our both countries are sharing special relations are making bad news in Kathmandu as well as in Delhi. So my point is that such dialogues, such engagement should be leveraged to influence the policies of the government, of the policy making, because as of now, I think we are lacking attraction in our bilateral relations, and which is something which should worry all of us. When the pandemic has hit hard the entire world, we are involved in solving border disputes, not solving border disputes. We are trying to give it another angle. I'm not going to defend the state's role, either in India or Nepal. But this is not something which was wishful, for sure. The matter has been pending for the last 7 decades. It could have tabled and resolved. So my submission is, I will be very, very brief, that India's Northeast and Nepal has a long history. It's not started only with the British colonial rule. Even before that, as Keshab sir has said. And 1816 Treaty of Sugauli, as well as 1950 Treaty of Friendship. No matter how different they are now, either in Kathmandu or anywhere. But these two treaties give a big support to India-Nepal relations on the basis which we are holding this dialogue. We are sharing our feelings. We are envisioning a common future, a shared future for South Asia. And I will look a bit about a possibility of cooperation between Bangladesh, Bhutan, Nepal, and India. About that, Binoj sir and I had a long discussion some time back, a Himalayan triangle possibly. So that will cure the problem which BBIN has been offering to us all along. So I will stop here. I will rather prefer taking questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Atulji, for being very precise and to the point. Maybe now I'd like to request Hari sir, are you there? Hari sir, are you there? Okay, maybe now what we can do is we have one questions. It is not like directed to any specific panelist, but I can read it out for you. With the US eager to engage this region, given its geostrategic interest, can we envision a roughly triangular cooperations model for Indo-Nepal development cooperations, the US being the third party? The basically question is that can US be the third party for like a trilateral cooperation between Nepal, Northeast India, and US? Can anybody address to this question?
Whom you are referring to?
Any one of you? Maybe like.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Okay, it is in the chat box as well. Okay. With the US eager to engage this region, given its geostrategic interest, can we envision a roughly triangular cooperations model for Indo-Nepal development cooperations, the US being the third party?
May I answer this?
Yeah, sure.
This is going to be a difficult proposition in my views, because US has its own strategic interest in the South Asian region. And certainly Nepal is not forming so important position into that framework. Second thing, the kind of leadership the US has in today's time is surely not focused on South Asia after an extent. So I think it's going to be difficult.
Okay.
Can I
Now
say
maybe, okay,
Shyamji, can I say something?
sure.
No, I would like to react to this question, not directly answer the question, because I don't think I have much to say directly on the role of the US as a third party. But I would like to say that, and also in reference to what Binoj ji has said about so very well about the larger picture. I would like to say that the main action in the world is in the maritime domain right now. It is, if you look at the epicenter of geopolitics, it is really not in the mountains or in the Himalayas. It's in the maritime domain. It's basically about. I'm sure you will agree with me. And if you see that domain, India's the role of if we come closer home to Nepal and the northeast, it's the Bay of Bengal. If we go a little further away, it's the Indo-Pacific in the Indian or the US or the perspectives. From the Chinese perspective, also I think I'm not an IR expert, neither am I a security expert, but as an observer, I can definitely say that China's larger framework is also, a lot of it is in the maritime domain. And the component of the connectivity through the Himalayas, whether it's the Western Himalayas, Central or the Eastern Himalayas, is one component of it. And I think we need to look at this in that perspective, and therefore, I think if you look at the maritime domain, Nepal-India cooperation in access to the maritime domain, for Nepal, it's access on, BIMSTEC. Nepal is a member of the BIMSTEC, and I think Nepal can leverage its. There's a lot more to be desired about the progress of BIMSTEC. All these multilateral agencies, formations, but definitely for Nepal and the Northeast states, I can say that its access to that maritime theater, whether it's and that larger equation of access to the blue economy in economic terms, access to the connectivity and access to a secure maritime architecture, which contributes to the overall security architecture. So I think Nepal-India relations, in context of the difficult times that we are seeing today, whether it's in the Kalapani border dispute or whether what's happening in the Indo-China front, I think we have to look at it in that perspective also. And even the role of the US in the region, whether it's South Asia. Mr. Atul Thakur said that, yes, US is not active in South Asia, but I think everybody has an interest in the maritime security of, the world has become so small, and it's, these are becoming like ponds. The bays are becoming like ponds, and the oceans are becoming like the seas. So we have to bridge them and there are different formations happening. So as we watch that, definitely I think everybody is interested in each other. I don't think any part of the world is left behind, whether including the Antarctica actually. So, yeah, I mean, definitely there are possibilities are open for everything, of course. Yes.
Thank you, Sabir sir, for your take. Now, what we can do is, as we don't have any questions from our attendees, I'd like to request each of you to have 1 to 2 minute final thoughts. So I start with Keshab sir.
I'll start. Just small comment regarding this. So far, just a comment by one of the person I forgot about the involvement of the US in this front. At a time when, we are so much close neighbors, having so much of similarity and having so much of commonalities, having so much of connectivity at everything, Nepal and India, facing so much of things. If the third party, if we talk about the third party invention, third party involvement, so the matter is more complex. So I don't mind. I'm not a security and strategy expert, but as that humanitarian perspective, I know the perspective of the the persons, the citizens of this region. I think we first need to to link or connect the India and Nepal to make the things better, so that then we can talk about the coming of the involving third party, maybe US or because they have a different interest. Now my commentary 1 minute that one thing as Sabiji also mentioned, Nepal and Northeast has one common, that we both are landlocked, because Sabiji is the Northeast state also demanding to to have a passage from Brahmaputra to the Bengal. Otherwise, they also have to go to Kolkata for carrying things. So they are searching recently for this way. Nepal to have same thing. So, and the second, as all you mentioned, this cultural or the language relation, the Nepali language. So last note that diaspora. So just Atulji mentioned 500 over maybe 2 million, or let's say 2 million Nepalese, the living there. So why not we do work to cultivate them to make our strength in our relations? I mean the countries to countries always have some kind of problem. This may be like the border problem, the recent one. So I don't think it will go. It will settle someday when we sit together. So my concern is how to link. Like one thing, I don't know whether it's strategically or geographically, politically, Northeast India is linked to Delhi. If we open Nepal's corridor, Nepal's road, it will be much, maybe 1600, 1700 shorter than now. The Northeast state is using the road from West Bengal and going to this and to Delhi. So even if we do small things, it can make a lot of difference. If we permit, like this BBIN things, from Assam to Delhi using Nepalese corridor as a road, that makes sense. So why don't we explore that kind of areas where we would have an advantage for both of us, and to strengthen relation with the northeastern states. So the northeastern state and Nepal relations will be in broader term will be very game changer for even the bilateral relations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. And now I'd like to request Akanshya ma'am for your final take. Very, very briefly.
Thank you, Shyam. I think the question on the US is emerging in the context of the MCC debate in Nepal right now. The Millennium Corporation Challenge, it has been a hugely debated issue in Nepal right now. And there is a voice that is emerging from, especially from Kathmandu, that it may have a strategic military angle to it. Now, US has traditionally played a role, maybe not a very visible role in Nepal, but US has always been a factor. Now, Nepal was seen more as a sphere of influence of India because of our close proximity and because of the special relationship that we have with India. But with coming of China, and that too in a very, very major way, has almost displaced that narrative. But will China be able to displace India completely from Nepal? Now, that is something, I think needs a separate webinar. And I see no possibility of that. We still have to cash on the, the affinity between the people. We cannot obviously have the same kind of comfort with other players. But as of today, Nepal is seen to be a place where all major powers' interests are amalgamating in a sense. We do not know how that is going to play out. We have to really wait and watch. On our on our topic, the cooperation with the Northeast, one point that really comes to my mind is, and also a question maybe to our experts, is why is it that we have not looked at joint studies in sectors like culture, literature, art, in all these years to promote our relationship? I think joint studies between think tanks, universities will probably go a long way to address this issue. And at the same time, the issue of identity, which is one thing we cannot, forget in this debate. We should definitely bring all of this to table and start some kind of a joint research and study. Thank you, Shyam.
Thank you, ma'am. Now I'd like to request Binoj sir for your final take. Sir, you have to unmute.
Let me take this on two parts. Firstly, the U.S. Concern. Looking at the five reports or the 5 strategic papers that the United States has produced, United States particularly focuses on partnership and allies. Okay. Second is China as a competitor. Third is economic as a tool of state power. And it refers, in the South Asian policy, it refers India to play a major role in South Asia and even in Afghanistan. So this illustrates that the United States' role in South Asia and the Himalayan region is inevitable. So we're coming to a position when we need to decide what is right and what is wrong. That's why I referred in my first presentations about the foreign policy. Does India, a major lead of the non-aligned movement, does it still garner a non-aligned movement as its policy? Will it? Things to see. Now, the second is, like when you are talking about Nepal and the Northeast, we have to talk about the developments that is taking place, especially of infrastructure from north to south. And when I refer to about the Siliguri corridor, okay, so Taplejung, the district of Taplejung, is not too far from the northern border. So when we see things happening, even after 45 years in the western, in the Himalayas, will we see things of similar patterns happening in the borders or the tri-junction borders? So these are the fundamental questions that we should look into and really find out ways and means so that Nepal and India lives in harmony. We may have different policies, we may have different things that we do, but one thing we can never stop is the togetherness of our civilization, the travels that students do, the travels that trade do, the travels that transit does, and the people's movement. So these are things that we have to be together with. As at the same time, we have to find policies so that we can address. And since we have survived staying as a buffer so far, how can we survive in the next decade, or how can we envision Nepal in the next half a century? Thank you, Shyam.
Thank you, sir. So, sir, would you like to make any final comments?
No. I just wanted to say that drawing a leaf from history, if you look at quite a while back, there was another buffer, which was, India had 2 borders with present-day China. One was the Tibet, which is now a part, but it used to be a different buffer. And then there was another movement between China and India, which was in the with the Yunnan province. There was a lot of movement there. Even today, the Thai, there are lots of common communities who live in those regions. The Northeast India, of course, I think India-Nepal relations, as I have outlined, there are many possibilities. And I second Akanksha ji's point of view that I think so far the press coverage of India-Nepal relations with specificity to the northeastern region has been low. There has been, everything is rooted, either through Bihar or Delhi or West Bengal. So I think we need to have much more interactions with the northeastern region. I mean, I can say that in India, the government of India is fully, I'm not a government person, but I can see it as an observer that the government is extremely keen to not have everything done from Delhi. People are engaging with the region very much at a government level. That's a major, that's a major shift. And I think we need to have more such interactions. And on my parting note, I'd like to welcome all of you to Shillong, to our center at some point, to come and maybe we can host something, a Nepalese delegation, and you can meet friends from the northeastern region, and let's take this forward. So thank you very much, and looking forward.
Thank you, sir. Atulji, would like to make some final thoughts, comments?
Yeah, just last few points.
Yeah.
Coming to Akanshya's point that Nepal is drawing the interest of major powers of the world. I think this is something which worries me as a friend of Nepal. This is like a nightmare, Akanshya. I'm referring it to you.
Yeah.
But I completely agree with your first point that China is not going to evaporate India's position in Nepal. India will stay there. And you have been working for India-Nepal relationship for a long time. So you know where our strength lies. Coming back to the point of Binoj, sirs, that the United States interference or interest will be inevitable in Southeast Asia. I think this is not something wishful, but possibly it can happen. We have seen the cases of India-Pakistan, where the US has invested a lot over the decades, and finally the result is before us. We have Kashmir, we have very disturbed Southeastern region. For that matter, we don't have a strong SAARC today. So I think the US should be kept out from our plan, and Nepal must engage directly with India. Even there are issues, it should directly deal with India. That is my wish as a common citizen. Thank you.
Okay, I think now we have to end here. As like all of you pointed out, we have to explore similar kind of interactions in days to come in order to like better understand the relations, like various facets of relations between Nepal and India's Northeast. So I'd like to thank you all for your valuable time and valuable interventions. I think we need to say goodbye for now. Thank you for your participation once again.
Thank you. Thank you, Shyam.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shyamji.
Yeah, thank you, Shyam. Thank you, AIDIA.